We shall see. Alrighty. Yeah, I don't want to take up all the Cowboy talk, but
No.
let's start with the Washington Redskins, and Trent is about to jump on here in a second, so
Okay.
we can wait until he fully gets on. But for the Redskins this year, it is. I don't know many Redskins. I don't know about you, Redskins fans. Um,
You?
I can't imagine what it would be like cheering on this organization and seeing some of the decisions that they make, the way that they treat the organization.
Most
But
fans.
like we just talked, as from a fantasy perspective, outside of Terry McLaurin, there's not a whole lot in this list that you can rely upon whatsoever. And yeah, I don't know what would that be like if that was your fan base. I'm not sure.
The Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, but
So,
even the Browns, I mean,
until the last couple years,
yeah.
they finally made moves in free agency. That's what changed for Cleveland. But yeah,
Okay, so how about let's talk about the quarterback situation. Dwayne Haskins. I mean, we waited. They started Case Keenum. We waited. They started Dwayne Haskins, and then immediately, reports coming out like, should they have drafted him? And then Case Keenum moves. It seems like Haskins is the guy, and then they bring in Kyle Allen from Carolina last year, who threw. I mean, he's got the arm talent, but he still threw 16 interceptions. Kind of went downhill after he had a hot start. But now they come into camp again with a quarterback controversy, and you got to think for Haskins' confidence, the moves that the Redskins are making, you've got to think that that's affecting how he feels within the team. Would you agree with that?
I don't think his confidence has wavered. Just because I mean, this is a guy that competed in the same room as J.T. Barrett, Cardell Jones, Joe Burrow,
Yeah,
and, and when it was all said and done, when Cardell and J.T. was gone, Dwayne was the guy. When a lot of people in Columbus wanted it to be Burrow. So I mean, that dude, he doesn't lack confidence at all.
yeah,
I think I think there might be a little bit in his head, kind of like, okay, what's going on? Why would you draft me 15th and not even really give me a chance? Like he didn't really have a chance. I mean, I know he played in 9 games, but some of those games he was put in because Case Keenum was playing like trash and they were down big, and then he was just thrown into a fire down by 21, and everybody's expecting him to just all of a sudden. I'm like, dude, you didn't. They didn't even handle him correctly.
yeah,
He has all the talent in the world. Obviously, I'm super biased because I'm Ohio State, but dude, all the Ohio State football I've watched in 29 years of life, dude, I've never seen somebody like him. Even Troy Smith, as good as Troy Smith was, this dude is just on a whole nother level.
yeah,
He's an NFL quarterback. He's an NFL quarterback. He just needs a chance and he needs time. And the offensive line for the Redskins was absolutely garbage. He was always running for his life. Um, Obviously, Terry McLaurin was in a few games, just a bunch of stuff. So
yeah, yeah. I agree with
I
you.
believe in him.
Yeah. Well, we got our guest. It looks like he is in. Trent, can you hear us, man?
Yeah, I can hear you. How's it going? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
you are good.
Awesome.
Welcome
Sweet.
on. Welcome on to the Couch Scouts podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks
Um,
for having me on. I think I should be on a couch, so I hope this is all right.
I, I'm on an
We're
office.
not on a
I'm on
couch.
an office chair, so yeah, I'm not abiding by that rule either.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so welcome on to the podcast. This is actually our first time. I mean, we just joined. Anthony and I just joined a dynasty league that you are commissioning
Yeah.
this year. We're starting it up in
I think
2020. So, but we actually haven't had a chance to get to meet you and to know you. So, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and people for the podcast, where you're from, what do you do?
sure. Yeah. So thanks for joining the league too. I think Johnny was the one who invited you guys on. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I know Johnny from my time at Olivet. So I'm originally from Leroy, Illinois. So
Okay.
Central Illinois. Been here my whole life. Went to Olivet for 4 years, and then I landed here in Pekin, Illinois. So I work at a church here, United Methodist Church. I do youth ministry. So, but I've been doing fantasy a long time. Love sports. I've loved sports a long time. So I've been following the NFL quite a while. Big Cubs fan, as you can see from the stuff behind me, but Cowboys fan too. I kind
Okay.
of bounced around a little bit when I I was little, couldn't quite make my mind up on my favorite team, but then I landed on the Cowboys. So I think it's been the right choice, but would like to see another Super Bowl come around here before too long. So, yeah, don't really know why I'm a Cowboys fan. Really, it just kind of always they kind of ended up picking them. But
America's
I
team.
don't really know why, being in Central Illinois, but it seemed like there were still plenty of Cowboys fans around there. So yeah,
They're everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
everywhere, man.
America's
We
team.
are
America's
everywhere.
team. We don't blame you. Yeah, Anthony. I think Anthony might have been the first Cowboys fan that I've met, and that was probably 2.5 years ago. Anthony, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
really.
But now he's introduced me to way too many of them, so
Yeah,
I got to get
there's at
back.
least few in the and a few of them in the new league. It looks like, so that's good. So keep building the numbers up there.
All right.
Yes.
Might make those Cowboys players a hot commodity there for a bit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, Johnny and I went to Olivet as well. I was there after Johnny, but that's when I met him
Okay.
as well. So I went
Yeah.
there for 4 years, and then Anthony and we did a ministry school out in California,
Sweet.
and that's how we met. And now Anthony's in Texas. I'm still out here in California, but
Okay.
yeah,
Sweet.
little connections there.
Yeah. Awesome. So are you from Texas then? Is that how you became a Cowboys fan in the first place?
I'm from Ohio.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So I just my dad was a Cowboys fan, so when I grew up, it was just Cowboys always.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So Trent, we're talking the NFC East, and we wanted to wait for you because we were excited to hear what you had to say about all these teams, and
sure.
we'll definitely get to the Cowboys so you and Anthony can have your heyday and talk about how great they're gonna be. But we started with the Redskins, and we were kind of talking about Dwayne Haskins and Kyle Allen and
Yeah.
the quarterback, I guess, situation that the Redskins are in once again, and
Yeah.
they have the second overall pick. We don't know what they're going to do.
Chase Young.
Yeah, I hope I hope they pick Chase Young, but they have surprised in the past.
They should pick Chase Young. I'd be really surprised if they picked anyone other than Chase Young. But I mean, there's always
Right.
the rumors that are floating out there. But
Right.
Yeah. So as far as the quarterbacks go, I mean, they have Kyle Allen for 2020 and Dwayne Haskins. Is there a quarterback in there that you would prefer to see lead the Redskins out of the tunnel to start the season?
I mean, I think definitely they should keep rolling with Haskins. Just looking at the draft capital that they invested in him, and just the player that he was at Ohio State, I think it's worthwhile for them to keep letting him develop. I think if they were to just switch to Kyle Allen, especially after starting him down the stretch last year, it could kind of stunt his development a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think they should keep rolling with Haskins too, and see how the new coaching staff can help him along. But the X factor is what's going to happen with this messed up off season. You know, I think bringing in new coaching staff, Ron Rivera. I'm not sure who they brought in as the OC, but for them to kind of have that time to get to know Haskins and learn the playbook, I mean, that's just going to kind of throw things off a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Allen in some way ends up seeing some action early on. But I think they should stick with Haskins. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, as a Cowboys fan, I will 100% be happy from the Cowboys' perspective of Kyle Allen. Because,
You know, he didn't do too bad at different stretches last year, but yeah, I mean, he's not
For
going to
sure,
blow
for sure.
anyone away, probably.
for sure, but the ceiling of Haskins compared to the ceiling of Kyle Allen.
Yeah, for sure.
But me being a Ohio State guy, I want to see my boy Haskins do both. So,
Yeah, I didn't follow a whole lot of Ohio State, so I didn't get to really watch him a whole lot as a prospect. But what was your kind of take on him, Anthony, as he was was there at OSU and then heading into the NFL?
I honestly thought, I mean, no one knows this because we talked about it so much. I mean, yes, Kyler Murray was elite, but Haskins was right there. Dude, Haskins is right there as well. He's in a bad spot.
Yeah,
You know, it's about just if you get drafted to the wrong team, it's just like Brady Quinn was kind of similar, and he went to the wrong team.
hmm
He went to the Browns.
Yeah.
yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah,
Exactly. I'm like, if Haskins last year would have, I thought there was plenty of times where somebody like Cincinnati was going to take him. There was a lot of rumors, and they passed. I don't know why so many people passed on him, and maybe it's just that one thing about him at Ohio State, and a lot of my friends that they didn't like about him was he's very confident, but he comes off very cocky, similar to Burrow. So I think kind of rubbed him a little wrong. Coming that process. So
yeah, and wasn't he kind of like a little bit of a 1-year wonder in the sense that he really like kind of peaked like right that last year before coming out?
So he came in as one of the top quarterback prospects out of high school, but he was behind JT Barrett.
Right. Yeah.
But trust me, every Ohio State fan in Columbus, Ohio, that really knows football, we all wanted Haskins from day one to start over Barrett because of how he was. And then, so there was a couple times his first 2 years where Barrett got hurt and he came in and he shined. And then he started 1 year. Yeah, he started 1 year. So
gotcha.
Then
yeah. I mean, it was a heck of a year though. I don't
remember
the stats exactly.
Yeah, 50.
I mean,
50
he
touchdowns.
broke every Drew
for sure.
He broke every Drew Brees Big Ten record.
Wow.
So
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Joe Burrow came in and made all that look like nothing, right?
He did.
Oh man,
he did.
I think
pretty lucky that I drew him in our lottery there for the draft, man. I was like, the guys are gonna see this, they're gonna be like, you totally rigged it.
Oh yeah.
What's funny though is that we did like the exact same thing, and I'm in a league with a lot of guys from all of that, and we did the same kind of thing last year because we had just transitioned to Dynasty last year, and I ended up drawing like Ryan Finley, and so I got the number 12 pick, so it was like literally the exact opposite this year. So I was pretty thrilled to come out of that with Burrow. But yeah it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. That was I have never played in a league where the draft order has been chosen like that, just based on the NFL draft. But I love that, and it gives us something to look forward to with, like, obviously no sports being played right now. So that's a good idea. I'm excited for that.
I get in the last pick.
Yeah, unless you have J.K. Dobbins.
But I love him. Yeah. I love him though.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. It's like, wish that could just be your pick, but it's just
right.
It's fall in the draft.
Yeah. Speaking of running backs, go ahead, Noah.
So running back situation for the Redskins, and we kind of talked. The Redskins, as from a fantasy perspective, don't have a lot of value at the moment outside of Terry McLaurin. Right. But from a running back perspective, you got Adrian Peterson, who finished as the running back 28 last year. Darius Geis finished as the running back 62, and then they acquired Peyton Barber from the Buccaneers, and he was the running back 39. All of these guys, Peyton Barber is outside of the top 230 players in Dynasty. Adrian Peterson is right on the cusp. And then Darius Geis is still being taken in the 7th round of Dynasty startups. Where are we at consensus-wise of who is the running back to own in this backfield for 2020? And do the Redskins, I mean, it wouldn't make sense from my point of view for them to make a move in the draft unless it was later on. But, with those 3 names, you kind of do need to get a different running back at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole group of people, though, which is, I think, what the challenges for fantasy owners trying to sort through, like who's going to emerge, especially whenever you take into account Geis's injury history.
Right.
So that's really the biggest thing, because I think if he can stay healthy and perform well, then I see him clearly emerging, and that's how he's being drafted as going way higher than those other guys. But kind of the dark horse, I think, too, is Bryce Love, and I think he's kind of a sleeper. A lot of people. Maybe I'm jumping into something before you're going to talk about him.
No.
So Bryce Love, I think, is a really talented kid. Again, he kind of had that injury bug hit him, but it was mostly, from what I understand, that knee injury that he had his last year, senior year at Stanford. But if you go back and watch him in college, man, he was just a monster. So I could see a situation potentially where he kind of steps up, not necessarily maybe as like the workhorse guy, but as he emerges as kind of the lead guy, see Geis go down and AP maybe isn't really blowing anyone away and Love gets in there and starts getting some work. I could see that scenario kind of playing out because I think he's just got more of a pedigree, more of that big play potential than some of those other guys. So what do you think, Anthony?
No, I agree. I completely forgot about him.
I honestly did too. I can't believe I forgot to put him on the list.
I love him. I remember him at Stanford. So many people, they were like, he's not Christian McCaffrey, but I mean, glimpses of him. And I mean, he's not McCaffrey in the NFL, but he can be good.
Yeah.
He could be very good. He is definitely a sleeper, and he's not on here, so
I think he
I
was actually before when he decided to go back to school. I think he was
Mm-hmm.
like the first or second rated
Mhm.
running back in the class, and then decided to go back
He
to
was, yeah.
Stanford, and then blew up his
Yep.
knee. So that
Yep.
I mean,
I was
we
looking
know he
forward to
has
him
the
coming
talent.
out. Yeah.
right, very
After that
similar
junior
to
year.
yeah, very similar to Etienne and Hubbard this year. So I hope the same things that happen to them.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
But yeah,
yeah,
I like Mac Love a lot. That's a good point. I have AD just because I needed running back help last year, and I think Noah traded him to me. And I actually ended up having to start him every week because
Yeah.
he's averaging almost. I mean, he's averaging a little over 4 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the job done, but I think I'm with you on guys. If it's the injury history, if he stays healthy, he's definitely he's their most talented back, other than the
Yep.
potential Brees Love. Yes.
And you could see that too last year. I mean, even at the time when he got back in, he was looking really good, man.
Yeah.
Breaking off big plays and stuff. He was decent in the passing game, and then it was like out of nowhere again. It's like, yep, knee injuries, he's back out.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, I hope for him that he's able to overcome that. But it's definitely something you can't necessarily count on at this point, which makes sense why the Redskins are bringing in all these guys. I think J.D. McKissick, they brought him in too. So they
smooches.
got a bunch of guys, smooches, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just amazing to me. I don't know if I would take Darius Geis in the 7th round though. That's
Mhm.
the thing. But I guess if you are if your roster is stacking up pretty good and you want to take that risk for a potential high reward.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at his draft capital from a couple of years ago when he came into the league, I think he was going in the third round at the latest when he was a rookie out of LSU. He was.
Yeah.
I mean, they said he was the best like all around back in that class, and then I don't remember if it was the first game of the season or a preseason game when he went down, but we've just seen his ADP drop since then, and he hasn't really been able to get back on the field. He's shown flashes, but I mean, from any kind of fantasy perspective, you need a player to be out there for 16 games minimum just to help your chances. And I mean, he hasn't really been able to do that. So I would agree with you. I'll pass on him in the 7th round. I unfortunately drafted him like crazy when he was a rookie, and I just had to keep selling him for cheap and losing all of my investment on him. And at this point, I'm a little biased because I'm just hurt.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was really excited for him coming out too, and I remember like Matthew Berry hyping him up big time too. But yeah, I mean, hopefully he reaches that potential at some point. But yeah, that I feel like that injury is kind of factoring a little bit into his price tag. But yeah, 7th round still seems a little bit rich. But I mean, just the way that his value has definitely even gone down since his rookie year. If you have confidence, I guess that maybe he can bounce back and put together a healthy season. He could be a potential kind of buy somewhat low.
Yeah. For
just
sure.
talking purely from startup, there's chances are there will probably be guys around that 7th round. I don't know where in the 7th round he's fallen ADP wise, but might be someone else worth more taking a shot on than him.
Yeah.
But there's always that potential,
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the wide receiver position and talk about a guy who last year would have been that buy low and get a big return on investment, Terry McLaurin, who has seen his ADP skyrocket since last year. I think the most common nickname that I've seen from him is McLaurin F1, which I love because he's so fast. But 58 receptions last year, 919 yards, 7 touchdowns. He played 14 games for the Redskins, and finished the season as the wide receiver 24. I love Terry McLaurin. I loved him coming out of Ohio State. I remember me and Anthony talking about him, and when he landed with the Redskins, he basically had the entire depth chart to himself last year, and it looks like the same this year. So, what are you guys expecting out of McLaurin in 2020?
I think that kind of the factor is going to be that quarterback play too. I mean, if you see Haskins taking some of those steps forward, you never quite saw what some of those people were projecting. That college connection really being a big factor last year, but I can see that continuing to grow for sure. And at least at this point, I mean, especially with like Jordan Reed gone. I mean, they don't really have anyone. They've thrown to the tight end so much when Reed has been healthy. They don't really have anyone in that spot right now. They don't really have that pass catching running back who's going to take a ton of value away. Like they've dumped it off to Chris Thompson so much before. So I mean, I think his path to targets is just so wide open right now. I mean, it's hard to project anything lower than at least a wide receiver too.
Right.
So I mean, if he's just going to be force-fed the ball and keeps developing, I mean, he showed himself to be plenty able to get open and even get some of those, make some big plays in that offense. If he can keep growing in that respect, he's got a huge ceiling. I think I can see Washington definitely drafting a wide receiver pretty high just because their depth chart is pretty barren in that regard. So I think he's going to see some other pretty talented playmaker come in at wide receiver. And with the wide receiver class we've got, could push him for that role maybe down the road. But I think for sure in 2020 he's going to be that locked and loaded wide receiver one on their team.
Yeah.
Yes. No, you touched on it. I was going to say my one thing that scares me is when we watched him last year. I follow the Redskins so much because it's NFC East and because they had Haskins and McLaurin because of their boys. And McLaurin put up so many great numbers with Case Keenum, and then when Haskins came in, his targets dropped. His yards started to drop, and he only had 2 touchdowns. So 5 touchdowns with Keenum in like 5 weeks, and 2 touchdowns in like another 7 games or so with Haskins. So I was like, which was confusing, just because in college they were so elite together, and I know it's the same system, but you still have that connection, and I know that's big, but obviously
it have to do with the coaching change a little bit. Too. I don't know the timing of it because Bill Callahan came in and was like, "We're just gonna run the ball.
Exactly.
I don't even care." So that might have been a big factor in it too.
100%. That's another thing. And like I said before you jumped on, I told Noah one thing that Haskins had trouble with last year. The Redskins' offensive line is so bad.
Yeah.
He was always running for his life, so that was another issue. But well, I love McLaurin. 5th round is. I don't know. I don't know if I would take him that early, just because we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be like. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt me to take him that early. But
if we're talking Dynasty, I think that definitely brings his value up. Redraft maybe not quite as much, just because he's still going to be a sophomore receiver. But for Dynasty, since he's got that youth, I think that definitely works in his favor.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to turn into Michael Thomas. They were drafted in certain positions, and a lot of people slept on him. He's not going to turn into that, but he has a very, very potential, like, super high potential to be a pro, at least.
Yeah.
So I like him a lot, and obviously we'll see if they address some more wide receiver needs, which they desperately need to, which honestly everybody in this division needs to, outside of the Cowboys maybe.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's funny because I've seen a lot of people mocking them taking a receiver at some point, but
and I wouldn't be mad at it.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying when you look at the 4 teams, the Cowboys have probably the 2 best.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean you can throw.
The Redskins were trying to trying to sign Amari, so they're jealous that they want him on the team, which I don't blame them.
They definitely want wide receiver help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for McLaurin, I mean I would gladly take him at his current ADP just because I think that his ceiling is so much higher even than what he did last year in 14 games. I mean, you throw 2 more games in there, you're talking 65 to upwards of 70 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and that's considering that he was playing with Dwayne Haskins, playing with Case Keenum, playing with
run first offense.
Yeah, a run first offense. So I think just another year under his belt, another year under Dwayne Haskins' belt, and then you bring in a coach like Ron Rivera. I think it's the sky's the limit for those two, especially
and
since.
One more thing that could be a factor too, especially kind of late in the season, he kind of slowed down a bit because he started seeing more of that double coverage. Team started focusing on him more as he started to emerge, and so that could be another factor too, where that could be a helpful thing even to get that other receiver who can be, more of a threat to kind of take some of that coverage away from him.
Yeah,
could open things up for him even more.
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, so from a dynasty perspective, another wide receiver to own that you could potentially target is Steven Sims. Finished as the wide receiver 62 last year. He's got an 18th round ADP, and then there's Kelvin Harmon in there as well, and Trey Quinn. Just from those three names, I personally am not super interested in any of those three. I've bought a lot of Trey Quinn over the last couple of years when everyone was like, the Redskins depth chart's wide open. He's the guy in the slot, and he hasn't been able to last an entire season, I think, in 3 years. So I'm either McLaurin or a rookie in 2020, but outside of that, I don't think I think there's some other options I'd rather invest in. I like Kelvin Harmon, but I got to see a little bit more before buying there. Then at the tight end position, I think this is probably a spot where they could go in the draft as well. Maybe in the fourth or fifth round, they have Jeremy Sprinkle, who is their tight end last year. Just screams tight end right there. But he had 26 receptions, 241 yards, and 1 touchdown last year. You talked about it, Trent. The departure of Reed. I forgot his first name. Jordan Reed. Yeah, I was just gonna say Jeremy Reed. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Jordan Reed, and I just feel like Sprinkle's not gonna be the guy. I think they bring in a rookie or sign some tight end that's gonna get cut during OTAs or training camp. So we'll see. We don't have to talk much about that. Just one thing to note for fantasy owners to target. All right. Should we go Cowboys?
I don't care. Whatever you
I
guys
was thinking we'd work bottom up in the division,
Let's do it. Go Giants.
Redskins, Giants, Eagles, then Cowboys.
Hey, there we go. All right, let me pull up the Giants here.
You have some fantasy relevancy here.
All right.
A lot of it, actually.
Yeah. So the Giants. Let's start at quarterback. Daniel Jones. I was actually just talking with my buddy. He couldn't get on this episode, but he's a big Giants fan, and we were talking about favorite draft memories. And he said actually one of his favorite memories is Daniel Jones last year, just mostly because of his reaction to it, but also what Jones was actually able to do from a fantasy, not just a fantasy perspective, but what he was able to do for Giants fans. 3,000 yards, 60% completion, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and 11 fumbles, which that is definitely a red flag, but I think something...
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so many fumbles, man.
Definitely something to just keep an eye on, but I feel like that's also just rookie stuff right there, just figuring out ball security.
He learned it from Eli.
Yeah, exactly. But do you guys like that draft pick that the Giants made last year with Daniel Jones? I know it was pretty much in between Jones and Haskins. I feel like Giants fans got a decent quarterback.
Sure, for sure they did. I knew it now. When I was talking about Haskins earlier, I couldn't remember what was the crazy surprise that everybody was like, "Are you serious?" And even my Giants friends that I have, they were texting me like, "I'm so pissed off right now about this," because they were wanting Haskins. But hey, I mean, he actually showed so many flashes last year and looked good. I do like him. We'll see how he continues to grow. But I don't know. I forgot about the fumbles, man. 23 turnovers. That's insane.
Yeah.
23 turnovers to 24 touchdowns. That's like...
Yeah, that's basically Jameis Winston right there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like let's be honest. I'm not trying to sound biased, but I still think Haskins is the better overall quarterback. I mean, if you give Haskins Saquon Barkley, Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, I mean, you know what I mean, compared to what Haskins had to play with.
Totally.
So we will see long run, obviously, because they're both in the same division. But you guys can talk about him. I don't really like him that much, but he's definitely has potential.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely pretty surprised when they took him that high. I mean, I think so many people were. But in hindsight, it's looking like more of a smart pick than I think a lot of people gave the Giants credit for. They probably could have traded back and gotten him later.
Yeah,
exactly. But if he turns into a good player, I mean, then you can't really fault them for taking their quarterback. It's going to be obsolete. And he certainly looked it as a rookie. I mean, just looking at some of his stat lines and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
He had a few big touchdown games, and he threw a touchdown pass in looks like every start that he had, which is something you want, especially in a fantasy quarterback. You want him at least throwing a touchdown every time.
Yeah.
Drew Brees has made his money on that, man. I mean, you put him in there, he's throwing a touchdown. Of course, Drew Brees doesn't turn the ball over like Daniel Jones was, but I mean, he had some eye-popping numbers. I mean, there's at least a few weeks in there that he would have totally helped you win your week if you had him in there, especially like looking at that 5-touchdown game late in the year against the Redskins. So I think he definitely showed more of that ceiling. I mean, if we're just comparing him to Haskins, he showed definitely that higher potential last year. And he's got the edge in weapons for sure. Like you were talking about, Anthony, all those offensive pieces that the Giants have, Haskins just really doesn't have at this point. So, I mean, Daniel Jones, I like his potential. I'm not sure where he's going ADP-wise. Do you have that number with you guys?
11th round.
Yes.
11th round. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's one QB, right? Not super flex.
Yeah, right. Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's in that kind of mid-range QB2, I would think. If you're thinking redraft, especially with that potential to, if he has a good year and kind of takes that step to get himself into maybe the low QB1 type of tier.
Yeah.
If a lot of things go well. But he showed that ceiling, he showed that upside. So we'll just see how he develops. But the turnovers, yeah, you got to cut down those turnovers. You don't want to. You've seen that kill so many guys' careers. I mean, for a long time, that's what everyone was hating on Romo for, and Jay Cutler even back in the day too. So it's just something you gotta work on, and hopefully he can make those strides. But it sounds like that was something that was a concern of his during his time at Duke. That now it seems like he's carrying over
right.
a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Eli threw a ton of picks too, so Giants fans are used to it.
He did.
Yeah, Daniel Jones can at least run the ball, which I think I didn't put his rushing stats in there, but I do know he had a couple. He was able to use his legs, and that was one thing that coming into the draft last year that people were high on him was just his athleticism, being able to escape the pocket. So that's one thing as well, just from fantasy owners to keep in mind that he is going to, it might be 1 or 2 touchdowns this season, but he is capable of using his legs to escape the pocket. He's just got to make sure he's running with the ball and not dropping it.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say that's the one thing though. He ran when he does run. That's when the most was happening. I remember against the Cowboys, they had a chance late in the season to beat us, and he made a couple mistakes like that.
Yeah.
Just random fumbles. I'm like, oh, thank God, because they're driving the ball. But yes, he does have that run ability.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the weapons that that Jones is surrounded with on the Giants, and I think looking at this when I was making this chart of running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, the first thing to notice is that Jones did not have a single wide receiver, running back, or tight end that played all 16 games. Barkley played 13, Golden Tate 11, Sterling Shepard 10, Darius Slayton 14, and Evan Ingram 8. So you got to think that the offense is going to be better in 2020 if everyone can stay healthy. And obviously Saquon Barkley only playing 13 games, and I think it was an ankle injury that slowed him down. Those things, it's not just a bounce back injury. Those things affect you, for months if you're not able to allow it to heal right. But let's start at running back. The Giants have obviously Saquon Barkley. He's the finished running back 10 last year, but is an ADP 1.67. So he's pretty much going immediately after Christian McCaffrey. At times he's going third, but mostly going second. He had 217 attempts, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, 52 receptions, and 2 receiving touchdowns. He's the clear running back on this team, and I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about him other than he's a really, really good fantasy player, really good running back, and he should have an even better year next year.
Oh, I think so for sure. And I got to give a shout out to Johnny too, because he traded Saquon to me in that college league that I was telling you guys about. So thank you, Johnny, for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised even just hearing that he finished as running back 10 last year with everything that happened with him. I mean, people were so down on him, and he had a stretch that was just rough in the middle of the season. So to still come out at RB10, missing 3 games, most of 4 games, that just shows why Saquon is getting drafted as high as he is, and why he deserves that, man. he's just a beast. And
Yeah.
hopefully some of that passing game usage can get back up to closer to where it was his rookie level. I think that's probably about the only thing you can knock Saquon for at this point, is that maybe he doesn't get quite the passing volume of CMC, but he's just got that home run potential every game, and he's just gonna get fed the ball. The Giants brought in Dion Lewis,
Right.
so I don't think that scares any Saquon owner that he's going to lose any kind of work there. So yeah, I mean, he's locked and loaded, man.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
I think when the Titans signed Dion Lewis, everyone was worried because they thought he was going to shift into that third down role and take all the receptions away from Derrick Henry. And honestly, Dion Lewis didn't do anything in Tennessee whatsoever. He had 25 receptions last year, and I think Derrick Henry, I don't remember how many receptions he had. I think he had more than 20. But either way, he might be in there just for some relief on third downs, but there's no way that he's taking away carries from Saquon Barkley in 2020.
Henry had 18 catches on 24 targets last year.
Yeah, so pretty even for compared to a running back who is a considered third down back.
Right.
Yeah, and Anthony, you want to add anything in there on the running back situation?
No, I mean, everything you guys said is pretty much all you need to say about Saquon. Yeah, those 3 games, it was amazing he only missed 3 games, because I remember everybody was thinking it was going to be for a while.
Yeah.
The
But
bye week helped too, I think.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the receptions, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I'm 100% right, but I'm pretty sure Zeke had more catches than him. And yeah, he probably had a few more games because he stayed healthy, but I would not think Zeke would have more catches than Saquon Barkley does.
Yeah.
Just the way they play the game. But so we need to see that increase. We shouldn't see Christian McCaffrey having 3 times the receptions that Saquon does. Like,
Right.
we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how much of that is like Eli, the dump-off king, versus like Daniel Jones pushing the ball down the field more.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously it was fantasy gold for Saquon when you had Eli just throwing him all those dump-off passes and stuff, that short work.
Yeah.
But you got to think that they want to get him more involved, and we'll see what kind of hand Jason Garrett has in that too, as he's there as the OC. I keep forgetting that, man. That's just going to be weird. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's going to be very weird.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see. I think the Giants' offense is going to be better. I don't think there's any way that it could get a whole lot worse. I think a year for them to improve, and I'm interested to see what Jason Garrett brings to the offense. But hopefully, just some veteran leadership within the coaching staff. Yeah, we'll see.
Hey, if you want to see talent be underused, just watch Jason Garrett.
All right, we'll see. Okay, let's talk the wide receivers and wrap up the New York Giants. So we got Golden Tate, wide receiver 41 last year, going in the 14th round of Dynasty startups. Sterling Shepard was the wide receiver 54, going in the 10th round, and then Darius Slayton was the highest finished. He was a rookie, finished wide receiver 33, and is going in the 8th round of Dynasty startups. Slayton had 8 touchdowns. Shepard had 3. Golden Tate had 6. Did any of those names stick out to you guys with the value in there that you would rather have over the other 2 receivers?
Ooh. That's tough. I love Golden Tate just because we've seen it throughout his career, and he had the 4-game suspension, or else he would have played the season again, and missed 1 game instead of 5.
Right.
But you can't deny the success Slayton and Jones had together.
Yeah.
I don't think. He just seems like they gel. And Daniel Jones loves to hit that deep ball, like you were saying, and pushing the ball down the field. And him and Slayton connected on that a lot. Sterling Shepard has all the talent in the world, but it's very similar to, like you said, with Darius Guice. He's not as injury prone as Darius Guice, but he's injury prone. And he seems like every year, when it seems like it's time for him to shine, he just goes down with another injury or something happens. But yeah, I think for dynasty purposes, I'd probably go with Slayton.
Yeah, I mean, of the 3, if I'm picking one of them, it's Slayton. But Listening to the ADP, man, I mean, I know there was a lot of hype around Slayton last year, but man, so we were just talking about McLaurin in the 7th,
Right.
and I don't know where it was in the 7th exactly, but then you're talking Slayton in the 8th, so like a 1 round. Oh, were we talking about McLaurin in the 5th? Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's a big difference. I was missing.
I think Geis
Darius Geis was the 7th.
Geis, yeah, okay. But still, man, I mean, the 8th round for Slayton, that's essentially, depending on how you're picking it, like maybe like your wide receiver 3, maybe your wide receiver 4 if you went real heavy on wide receivers up front, I guess. But I don't know, that just seems a little bit rich. And he showed some flashes, but he was still a 5th round pick, and it seemed like he still made his money on touchdowns and on deep plays. And I know Daniel Jones likes to sling it, so maybe they keep that going, but if there's one thing I've learned doing fantasy football is that you can't bank on touchdowns year to year very much. You can't put a whole lot of stock into that. It's just probably the most volatile stat that they have, especially wide receivers. I mean, there's some receivers where that's more where they make their money. That's the red zone specifically guy, but you can't put a whole lot of stock into it. So I think he had, 8 touchdowns last year, something like that?
Yep.
On 48 catches.
Yeah, so that's probably not sustainable unless he keeps the volume going up more, and especially now that things are more crowded, like you're saying, Anthony. You had Tate missing for 4 games. You had Shepard out there for a huge chunk of the season. Evan Ingram's going to be coming back. Saquon, you think's got to be getting more involved. So it's just hard to see him increasing his volume much from what it was last year. And I just want to see a little bit more from him as kind of an overall receiver. Rather than more as kind of pigeonholed into that deep, big play guy.
Right. Yeah, and if you look at it, wide receiver 33 in 14 games in the 8th round compared to wide receiver 41 in 11 games in the 14th round. If you look at the value there, you use something better in the 8th round, I think, and then come back to Golden Tate later and get very similar value. Better. So,
yeah, that's where the age just has to come in Dynasty. How much are you going to put stock in that?
Yeah, exactly.
How long you think Tate's going to be playing for?
Yeah. Well, a guy that is higher than all of those receivers is the Giants' tight end Evan Ingram, who finished last year. This was surprising to me because I know he only played 8 games, but still finished as the tight end 19 and has an ADP of 62 overall, which is 6th round, somewhere there in the 6th round. 44 receptions, 467 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the 8 games. Like I mentioned, I mean, a lot of people are high on Evan Ingram, and I've been high on him since he came into the league, but it seems like he's a very versatile tight end that brings speed to the position and to the offense, but he has trouble staying on the field. Are you guys buying Evan Ingram in the 6th round, or are you waiting for another tight end later?
I probably would be waiting for another tight end later. There's some other high upside guys that I could get a round or 2 after that I probably would rather have than Ingram. But it's hard to fault the production he has when he's on the field. And it's just, again, kind of that injury bug, you know? Yeah, kind of like Jordan Reed. Yeah, when he's out there, he's the same type of player. Put in the slot, he gets a ton of targets when he's in there. And I can see that still happening when he's out there. But it's just hard to know. Hard to know if that's ever going to go away. And I'm not sure where he stands with the Giants. What was last year, like his 4th season in the league? I
think 3rd.
Pull that up maybe. It was his 3rd. Okay,
yeah.
So he's still pretty young. He's like 25. But I don't know where the Giants stand. There were some rumors that they were kind of open to trading him, so they're not sure if he can ever stay healthy. I don't know how much truth there is to that. But if you're ever in a position like he's been in, where he gets fed the ball when he's on the field, would hate to see him be out of that type of situation. Don't know where he's going to end up next. So that's just pure speculation. But as long as he's on the Giants and they're giving him work, he's worthwhile. I think there just would probably be other guys that I would prefer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You can't, like you said, you can't knock the production when he is out there. It's just hard to rely. If we're talking fantasy, it's just hard to rely on somebody that early that you don't know is play double-digit games. If that.
Yeah.
I'd rather roll with somebody. I don't know. Did we do the AFC West yet? We didn't.
No.
You know it because I got him last year, and I know he's going to be a stud, and I'm excited. Noah Fant. I guarantee Noah Fant later, and he's a very similar player.
Yeah.
and he was healthy last year. So, but it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. Ingram is very talented. He's one of the most talented tight ends in the NFL. It just sucks the injury history, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like he almost had his best year his rookie year.
He
which
did,
is something you
100%.
never really want to see out of a tight end, especially. So I don't know, maybe injury has been holding him back in that regard. It definitely has affected his production. But yeah, that's not a good career arc,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want to see it keep getting better rather than worse.
His rookie year, he had 60-something catches, 6 touchdowns. In the last 2 years, he's had 40 catches and 3 touchdowns in each year. So,
Yeah.
okay.
It's also probably the closest he's gotten to a full season, too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm in agreement with you guys. I'll pass on him in the 6th round. I think even if, I don't know. I mean, you think about a tight end coming into the 2020 draft, Chase Claypool, who reminds me a lot of Evan Ingram, just at a way bigger size, but he's most likely going to be a converted tight end, and Ingram's more of a pure tight end, but I mean his speed he's the fastest tight end in the league right now, and I think the only thing that makes me want to keep him on dynasty rosters is, like you said, Trent, just his ability to produce when he is on the field, no matter what. Like in 8 games, for him to put up that stat line, it's great. If he was able to keep up that for 16 games, he would be up in the top 4 among tight ends. So I'm fine. I'm fine drafting him outside of the 6th round, or trading for him for maybe an owner that's sick of having him for only half the season, and using him more so as a tight end 2 on your roster, and just having him for when he's available, and then having a backup option as well.
And like you said earlier, the Jason Garrett factor is key here, because I mean, you think of Jason Witten.
Yep.
Garrett loves tight ends, so Ingram can stay healthy. That's the thing. If he can stay healthy, he'll be top 5 tight end, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
With Garrett. So.
Yep. So if you can get him for the right price, definitely buy.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Absolutely.
You don't want to overpay, but if you think about his value right now, he's probably at the lowest it's been, seriously, since probably when he was coming into the league. Because once he had that rookie year, he was, talked up as the next stud dynasty, tight end. He hasn't quite lived up to it, so this is probably about the cheapest that you're going to get him for right now.
Yep. All right, well, let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles, who, as Anthony reminded me, they actually won the division. I thought it was the Cowboys, but the Eagles actually pulled it out, snuck it out in 2019, and won the division. Carson Wentz.
Record, right?
Yeah.
9-7.
Yeah.
Just barely, yeah.
Carson Wentz was actually able to play a full 16-game season, which was awesome for Eagles fans. I know he finished as the QB9, 102 ADP, so he's going in the 9th round, but 4,000 yards, 64% completion, 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. So it's actually a really, really good stat line for Carson Wentz in getting to see his potential in a full 16-game season. I think that's kind of what we can expect from Carson Wentz if he's able to stay healthy, to be in the top 10 among fantasy quarterbacks. He obviously was on the back end of that at QB9. I think the biggest question that has always been around him is his longevity, being able to stay healthy. Do you guys like him as your QB1 in the 9th round?
If I'm taking that strategy for quarterbacks and I can get him in the 9th round, sign me up, man.
Yeah.
Especially just looking at last year, he finished top 10. If you're drafting him in the 9th, that's probably about where you're taking him. He's probably about that 10th quarterback being selected if it's a 1 QB league. I like his potential. It's just kind of the health factor. But I think he's kind of had some kind of almost kind of fluky injuries. I don't think it's that he's just this guy who's constantly banged up. I think he's just a competitor, and he kind of has put his body out there and gotten burned a couple times. But
Andrew Luck.
Yeah, a little bit of that. But I mean, just looking back at his career stat line, I mean, that 2017 year, man, he showed that he's got that elite ceiling. I
Right.
mean, he finished as QB5 in 13 games played. I mean, he just was lighting the league up. So if he can keep that going, and if he can kind of take that next step now that he's a little bit more comfortable, maybe recovered a little bit more from was it the ACL that he had late in 2018, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that if you see that second year kind of bump as he's feeling more healthy, he could make even more strides, and especially as the Eagles get improved play around them. Yeah. I mean, he was pretty much just funneling targets to Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert at the end of the season because they had nothing else.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders too. He just was he just was dumping it to those guys. So if he got more help at receiver, which I'm sure they're going to get, that just helps his stock even more. So he's one of those guys. I think that his ceiling, he's pretty much being drafted at his floor. I think is pretty safe to say right now. You're getting a low end QB1 at worst if he stays healthy, and if that offense takes some steps forward and he continues to improve, then he's going to be a potentially upper tier type or a quarterback. What do you think, Anthony?
I love Carson Wentz, and I hate so much that he's on the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
I've told Noah plenty of times I would love to have Carson Wentz for the Cowboys. I mean, I like Dak, but I love Wentz.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said, the fact that he took this team to the playoffs last year, yes, the Cowboys choked a lot. We lost a lot of games we shouldn't have, but the fact is Carson Wentz carried his team to the playoffs on his back. No Alshon Jeffrey most of the time, no Deshaun Jackson at all. Signing guys off the street every week to come play wide receiver. Nelson Aguilar wide open, can't catch a ball.
Yeah.
Even Ertz got banged up at the end of the year, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah, he got hurt.
Jordan Howard out.
Exactly. And I know I'm talking non-fantasy right now, but the fact is, with all of that, he still put up these numbers. So imagine a healthy roster. Imagine a Justin Jefferson or a T. Higgins or one of these running wide receivers in the first round or maybe second round. Mm-hmm. And then Zach Ertz back fully healthy. Dallas Goedert keeps rising. He's going to be a stud if he stays healthy, man. He's in that top 5 quarterbacks, I think.
Yeah.
So 9th round, absolutely. Dynasty, absolutely. I'm taking Carson Wentz all day. Like he's up there. Obviously, there's Mahomes, there's Lamar Jackson. You can. Carson Wentz is very close after that with Russell Wilson. After Russell Wilson, even. But I would take him all day. So.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
For sure.
Anthony, you and I had been arguing between Dak and Wentz, and when you basically explained it, like the Eagles, you said look at the Eagles' weapons and then look at the Cowboys' weapons and look at what like Wentz has been able to do, and that you pretty much sold me there. I was like, okay, you're right. Wentz if Wentz was on the Eagles or on the Cowboys, you guys probably would have three straight Super Bowls because he's a really, really good quarterback.
Yeah. And if there's something that I'm banking heading into the draft, it's that the Eagles are getting a wide receiver in round 1 or round 2. I would almost bet it's round 1.
Yeah.
Which as a Cowboys fan is I just don't like, because I know that that's one of the big holes, and it's just going to be another weapon for Carson Wentz. But they're going to get Justin Jefferson, they're going to get T. Higgins, somebody like that. I've seen mocks where they're taking Ruggs, but I don't think he's not going to fall down to them. I think they're picking 21st off the top of my head. So they're not going to get him unless they trade up. But no matter what, they're going to get another great playmaker. And we'll see. I'm a fan of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I think that he's got potential. And so if he takes some more steps forward this next year, I think he was kind of under the radar, banged up, and I've heard that too, that he was kind of had some nagging injuries that weren't necessarily publicized. And he was a second-round pick last year, so I think he's got a lot of potential. He could be more of a red zone guy. And if they get Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson healthy, I think that's probably the most that they can hope for at this point, is that they're out there and contributing in some way, because both of those guys have both just had so much trouble with injury in recent years. But there's potential for their wide receiver core to bounce back this year.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the running back situation. So you talked a little bit about Jordan Howard being injured last year. He's departed down to Miami, and really the only running backs that the Eagles have that are worth mentioning are obviously Miles Sanders, running back out of Penn State last year, and then Boston Scott, who filled in a little bit. it was very confusing at times last year because there was all this hype surrounding Miles Sanders, and when when Jordan Howard was hurt, it even seemed at times like they weren't trusting Miles Sanders to be that workhorse running back. There was games where he had 20 carries, and then there was games where he had 4, 5, 6 carries a game, and so it was very fluctuated. I feel like there's a lot of hype going into 2020 around him as the workhorse running back and RB1, and his ADP at 20, second round, definitely suggests that as well. But are you guys sold on him being a second round pick in dynasty leagues right now?
Go ahead, Anthony. I can talk on Miles Sanders for all day long. So you go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll let you have yours.
Man, it's tough. I don't know about second round. It's tough for me second round just because they really liked Boston Scott, and when Boston Scott played last year, I don't know if you saw it, he actually looked a lot like Darren Sproles did.
Right.
And I know the Eagles love that kind of running style. I love Miles Sanders. He's definitely going to be a running back, of the future for them. It's just I'm just trying to think of all the guys we have talked about over the last, couple weeks around that same value as Miles Sanders, and I'm wondering, do I value him that high as some of these other guys or not? I guess I wouldn't be hurt taking him 20th overall for a dynasty because the future. I don't know. I feel like you really love Miles Sanders. That's why you said you could talk about him all day.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that scares me is, like, one of my friends is a big Eagles fan, and the thing that he hates is they never use the run game like the way that they all think they should.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where it's scary. It's like you just said, there's a couple games where Miles Sanders doesn't get the ball at all. So it's like, it's a second round pick in an offensive scheme that really catered to him that much just yet. I don't know. I'm gonna let you go because I want to you have to say about Miles Sanders. I love the talent. I just don't know about the team yet.
Yep. And so just to kind of start off, I think that anytime I hear people talk about Miles Sanders, that's pretty much the only negative, the only complaint that I hear. It has nothing to do with the player, and it has everything to do with the situation. People are just afraid that because the Eagles have used this running back by committee for so long that there's no way that Sanders can be the workhorse. But number one, I don't think they have ever had a player like Miles Sanders to fill that any kind of role to step up and be the lead guy. At least not whenever Doug Peterson's been there. Yes, since Doug Peterson's been there. And number two, I don't think he necessarily needs to be fed the ball like some of these other guys are for him to be productive because of his receiving ability and his big play potential. So, I mean, if you just look at his numbers down the stretch, I think Jordan Howard went out and he became the starter, I think, week 9. Kind of heading into that bye. But if you just look at the numbers he put up down the stretch, man, I mean, he was an RB1, and that's coming from someone that had him on his team, and he was a beast. And he only had 20 carries one time, and he was putting up so much production.
Yeah.
He had 11 carries, 12 carries, 17 carries, 15 carries, 19 carries, 20 carries, and 9 carries. So again, I mean, that's not great volume, but he's also catching a handful of passes every game.
Yep.
And he also really is due for some positive progression in the touchdown department. He only scored 6 touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 3 through the air.
Yeah.
That's going to go up because he's going to be the lead guy. I don't know what that split's going to be if he's still in a committee, but he's going to be the lead guy. He's going to get more touches, especially factoring in how they kind of eased him into the offense last year. And all of that, given all of that, I mean, he took a backseat to Jordan Howard for a while. He was not getting a ton of work. He was struggling early on. He was still in a committee down the stretch. He only got 20 carries, I think, once all season. The dude finished as a top 15 running back last year.
Yeah.
Given all of that. So if you think this next year, his sophomore year, if he's going to get even a bit more work, if he gets a bit more in the touchdown department, if he's the main guy or at least the lead of a committee from week 1 on, dude's guaranteed to be top 10 at least.
Yeah. The one thing, remember, so earlier you were talking about the touchdowns is hard. The one thing that's hard to rely on.
Yep.
I agree with you. His touchdown production should go up. But here's my thing. Like we were saying with the running back by committee,
Yep.
Boston Scott had 160 less touches, and he had the same amount of touchdowns. So that is where I'm like, why? Like why Doug Peterson? Like, I mean,
Yeah, so there was, I know at least, because I was watching this game, because again, I had Miles Sanders on my team, and so I was cheering for him.
right?
He went out, he went out one game. I'm trying to think, he had like cramps or something, and Boston
Yeah.
Scott was in there for that series, went down the whole field, and they handed it to him on like
Yes.
the one, and he scored. When I think Sanders would have likely been in there, like little things like that. But yeah, I mean, touchdowns. You're right; they're hard to predict. But you got to think he's going to be scoring more than
For sure.
3 rushing touchdowns.
For sure.
If he's the lead, especially in that offense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at even some numbers like Jordan Howard was just eating touchdowns early in the year, he's gone. So I mean, he's definitely still more of a thumper than he's more of a short yardage guy than Boston Scott's going to be. So I don't know. I just see the touchdowns going up for sure, especially if the Eagles' offense is more functional overall. More of those red zone opportunities. You got to think.
Yeah, no, that's good. I just wanted to.
Yeah, and I love Sanders, so I understand some of the hesitations on him, but yeah, that second round, if I'm sitting there probably mid to late second, especially in like a dynasty league,
Yeah.
I'm going to be scooping up Sanders. So
Yeah.
that's just how I feel about him. I like that receiving ability, and I like that big play potential. He doesn't necessarily need to be the guy that has to get fed the ball to make his money in fantasy, and those are the kind of the guys that I like, because I don't think you're always going to get that, and they can be more game proof or game script proof. Some of those guys, if they're a guy that's pretty run heavy, like a Derrick Henry, or even sometimes Zeke can be that way too. If the team gets behind, you're probably not going to get a whole lot more points out of them.
Yeah, I think if you that would probably be around the 207 to the 208 in the second round. I think if I went wide receiver in the first round, I would be more than happy to come around and get, like, if I took Michael Thomas at the 104 and then came back around and grabbed Miles Sanders at the 208, I think that's really, really good value to still be getting basically a running back one. That's what the headlines are telling us, is he's going to be the workhorse back.
Yep.
I'm hesitant, but I'm like, yes, I want to take him there because I feel like he's going to be great, and I feel like he's going to have 200 plus attempts. He's going to be close to 1,000 yards. But it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like he's right on the cusp of like just riskiness right now. But I guess that's kind of why in Dynasty or in any kind of fantasy league, you just gotta punch your ticket and bite the bullet and go with it and see what happens. But I think,
and here's part of the reason why I'm willing to do that too, is because I'm willing to bet that this is going to be the cheapest he's going to be. You're not going to be getting him at this same range next year. His value's for sure going to go up this year. And so if I'm in a draft, that's what I'm targeting. Is this going to be is this guy going to still be available at this point or later next year, or am I getting him in a place now where he's only going to be more valuable next year?
Yeah.
And I think that's Miles Sanders for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So we kind of touched on the wide receivers a little bit. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Really the only wide receiver that I like in that group is Whiteside. Alshon Jeffrey is a great wide receiver, and to get him, his ADP is still in the 13th round, which at his age and just in the amount of games that he's actually able to stay on the field, that concerns me. I feel like I can get some better value in the 13th round. And then Deshaun Jackson is basically a 20th round pick, just a flyer pick that you can get towards the end of your draft. But it's the same thing if the Eagles do bring in a wide receiver. If they do get someone like, if somehow they do land Ruggs, that puts Deshaun Jackson's whole value in question. But even bringing in a Justin Jefferson or a T. Higgins, the same thing. It's like, how does that value for Alshon Jeffrey gonna drop? And I feel like the only wide receiver that still has upside here is Arcega-Whiteside, just because of the youth and an off season to get healthy and to get acclimated with the offense and build a rapport with Carson Wentz. I don't know if either of you want to touch on the wide receiver position or predict who would be the best fit for them? Otherwise, we could just move on from there.
You know, um, I think that Justin Jefferson would be a good fit for them. I think, especially if you're considering like Deshaun Jackson's healthy, he fills that kind of deep threat outside role, and Jeffrey's going to play outside more too. I'm not sure where exactly Arcega-Whiteside fits in, but I think he can play both the slot or the outside.
Yeah.
But I think if you get Jefferson in there, who's a slot guy but could also play outside, I think you can. That's a bit more of a fit right away for him to kind of step in and fill a role that's needed in the offense. But he also has maybe a little bit more room to grow. And I just like Jefferson as a prospect a lot too. So I think he's got a good ceiling for them to have him emerge as kind of a wide receiver one. But yeah, if we're talking like dynasty, I think versus redraft, I think this is where you're going to see a lot of a value shift in terms of the receivers there, because you're going to probably see Alshon and Deshaun going higher than you are going to see Arcega-Whiteside or whichever rookie it is.
Right.
But in the dynasty community, I mean, if I'm in a dynasty redraft, or a dynasty startup draft, then I'm probably going to end up taking, especially if they pick a receiver round one, I think that player might honestly jump right to the top of that list in terms of whoever the receiver that you're going to want from there, from that team, and then probably followed up by either Alshon or Arcega-Whiteside, depending on how you feel about him. If you're confident Alshon can get healthy and bounce back, I think he can definitely still be like that wide receiver one on their team, because he's, even last year whenever he was in there, he's always going to be kind of that red zone guy. He's always going to get a decent amount of yardage, and he's going to be involved. I mean, they gave him a lot of targets when he's in there. But yeah, it's not a real strong group, but there's definitely some value to be had, I think, in Philly.
Yeah. Redraft leagues, I'll take Alshon Jeffrey just because I know he's going to fall and people are going to pass on him. I'll take him late in redraft leagues, knowing that he's got great red zone upside there. Okay, how about let's finish the Eagles, the tight end position. Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, both really, really good tight ends. Zach Ertz was the tight end 5 last year. His ADP is 62, which is the 6th round. 88 receptions, 916 yards, 6 touchdowns in 15 games. And then Goddard finished as the tight end 10, kind of like you mentioned, Trent. Like Wentz, those were basically his 2 consistent targets all year. And Goddard, his ADP is 101. Which is the 9th round. I don't actually have his stats from last year of how he fared to finish the season, but I think like we were just talking about, Evan Ingram is a 6th round dynasty pick as well. I mean, it would shock me to see Evan Ingram go over Zach Ertz. I know that there's a difference in age between there, but I feel like the consistency and the value of Ertz, despite having a really good youthful tight end underneath him, I'll still take Ertz till the day that I die. He's helped me win so many fantasy games over his career.
Yeah, redraft between Ertz and we were talking to Evan Ingram. I'm taking Ertz every time. Dynasty, I think it becomes a bit more of a question.
Yeah.
So I can see why their ADP is pretty similar. But yeah, that whole situation I think is pretty intriguing, just to see how that's going to play out over the next year or two, to see which one of them they're going to hang on to, because I think that both of them would like to be there, and I think the Eagles would like to hang on to them both, but I don't know how realistic that's going to be, because I think their contracts both expire after this season. So, I mean, we'll see this season or next season. Maybe it's 2021.
Yeah, I think it's 2021.
I mean, yeah, Goddard, I'm still a little salty about the fact that Goddard's even on the Eagles. Maybe Anthony feels the same way about this, but I remember that whenever he was getting drafted, I was really hoping the Cowboys would take him, and then the Eagles jumped right in front of the Cowboys. I think it was literally one pick in front of Dallas to take him, which, I mean, that was just going to be a match made in heaven, man. I mean, Dallas Goedert playing in Dallas, but yeah, so I just wish that would have happened, but maybe we'll get to pick him up in free agency or something.
There you go.
But yeah, I think he's a heck of a player. And if you're talking about like guys to buy at kind of the lower end of their value or kind of on the rise, I think Dallas Goedert has to be up there at the top of the list, especially if you're looking at the tight end position.
Yeah.
I think he's getting drafted, I think probably pretty similar to where like Noah Fant is too, like some of those guys, Fant, Hawkinson, like some of those young up-and-comers, and I think he should be right in that equation. I know Ertz was a little bit banged up last year, but if you think like Goddard finished as a tight end one playing behind Ertz.
Yeah.
I know they had other weapons injured, but like that's impressive, man. They were essentially kind of becoming like a 1A, 1B last year, and I think Goddard just has a pretty high ceiling, especially if Ertz were to move on, whether the team traded him or whether he went somewhere else in free agency. Goddard is just he's gonna skyrocket up draft boards. So I think if you can kind of get him pretty cheap on the front end of that, he's still going to give you pretty decent production. You can still potentially get like a back end tight end 1 year from him.
Yeah.
But then you've got the ceiling for way higher in years to come.
That's great. That's great strategy. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I love Goddard. I don't know. I mean, there's not much to say. I love Dallas Goedert a lot. I love Zach Ertz too, but just because of the age, Goddard's going into his third year. He's going into his third year, you know, and I mean, he has 9 touchdowns in 2 years, and Ingram has 12 touchdowns in 3 years. So, I mean, Goddard is even on the rise to surpass Ingram.
Yeah.
So, like we said earlier with that 6th round, Ingram, Ertz, 6th round, or Goddard, 9th round.
Yep.
Honestly,
Goddard all day.
Yeah.
I mean, Goddard.
Yeah.
Goddard all day. And we'll see. Yeah, I'm definitely salty about that. Goddard and Dallas would have been amazing. But
Yeah, the Cowboys
hey,
the Cowboys ended up getting Connor Williams. I don't know who.
offensive line.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is he still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, offensive line, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey, I know plenty of Eagles fans. They got Carson Wentz, but so many Eagles fans back home in Columbus wanted Zeke so bad when we got him. They got Wentz right before
There you
we
go.
got. So I was like, whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
But
definitely.
they traded up, man. It was just
Exactly.
they leapfrogged us by one. That was like
Exactly.
And I think that was right at the year when Witten retired.
Yeah,
so we were
it
like,
was.
looking for that replacement, and it would have been
And
worked
we
out
ended
pretty
up
great.
we ended up signing a basketball player instead, or drafting.
Yeah, that worked great. Was that Rico? Rico Gathers?
Yes.
Yeah. All the tight ends that could have been, right?
Hey, I love the one that we have now. I love him.
Jarwin, yeah.
I love
Well,
him.
we'll get to talk about him here in a bit. I'm sure. Yeah.
No one knows it.
Heck yeah. I like Jarwin.
Well, here's a quick question, Anthony. Would you rather have Goddard or Jarwin this for 2020?
Oh gosh.
Goddard, 100%. But
So you don't like him that much, then?
no, I love Jarwin.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah,
we just raved about Goddard. I mean,
I
he's
know.
tight end.
He's got, Jarwin's
He's
got a
number
little bit
2.
to prove first. Yeah.
All right, better question. Dynasty League, are you taking Blake Jarwin in the 14th round as the 167th player, or are you taking Goddard in the 10th round or 9th round?
I'm still probably taking Goddard. Yeah.
Until we see it from Jarwin. Jarwin has shown so much potential. But here's the thing. Dallas Goedert has been a tight end number 2 for the last 2 years. Blake Jarwin has been a tight end number 2 for the last 2 years.
True.
They both have been in the same position. Yes, Goddard has more opportunities. He's a better quarterback.
He did have a tight end 1 finish last year, technically. I mean, I know like the back end tight end 1 still feels like a tight end 2.
Yeah.
Right. I just mean on the depth chart. I'm
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
depth chart, not
Yeah.
fantasy
Right.
points.
Yeah. Yep. You're
So-
right. Yeah. Yeah. I think the
But there's
draft
also
will-
Jason Garrett.
There's Jason Garrett too. Yeah.
Love
So,
Jason
and
Garrett so much.
Yeah, we'll see what McCarthy ends up doing with how he's going to use Jarwin too. But we're probably getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit. But
Yeah. Well,
that's
let's.
all right. And we'll see what the Cowboys do at the draft. I think that they could draft a tight end. I don't know how high,
Harrison
but
Bryant.
I can see that happening. So that'll affect Jarwin's long-term potential too.
Absolutely.
Well, let's just do it. Let's talk about the Cowboys and wrap this bad boy up. I'll let you guys have your fun and talk about all these players that you know way more than I.
No,
Let's start.
No, you're talk about that because you love that.
Yeah, we got to get someone unbiased in here. No.
There we go. Balance it out. Dak Prescott finished as the QB2 last year, maybe to the surprise of some. So definitely a really good fantasy quarterback, different than maybe a franchise quarterback. His ADP is 74, seventh round pick, 4,902 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 35 completion percentage, and 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground as well. I think I like Dak Prescott a lot because he's putting up QB top 5 numbers. He was a QB2 last year, but he's being drafted mostly as the 5th best quarterback in most redraft leagues and most dynasty leagues. You got Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and then you throw in the mix of Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, and Deshaun Watson. And most dynasty leagues that I see, Dak Prescott is the 5th quarterback to go. And I think that's why I like him so much, because I can get him. I can literally wait all the way until the 7th round to get my QB1 for a dynasty. And he's been a great winning quarterback for fantasy teams, maybe not so much for the Cowboys. But for the QB2, this just goes to show, if you've never played in a dynasty league before, or really any kind of, this is the same for redraft leagues, you don't have to, as long as it's a 1 quarterback league, you can wait so long before going out and grabbing a quarterback. Obviously, if you want to go get Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, you're going to have to jump up a little bit, but don't go spending your first round pick on Patrick Mahomes if you're in a 1 quarterback league, please. But yeah, I'll let you guys talk about him. But that's just kind of my opinion on him, why I like him so much.
So I've just got him pulled up. Just looking at his fantasy finishes: 6, 11, 10, 2. The dude's been a quarterback 1 every year he's been in the league. And he had some kind of rough stretches, especially like his sophomore season.
Yeah.
Back in 2017, he still finished as QB 11, and so that was the year I think Zeke was out quite a bit. So he just gets it done, man. And he's grown every year. I think, especially watching him too. He's just he was phenomenal his rookie year, but he's still continued to improve. And we were talking Daniel Jones and all those turnovers and stuff. Dak has never been that guy. He's always taken good care of the ball. His highest interceptions, and he's played a full season every time, 16 games. He's had 13 was his highest. That was in 2017. Otherwise, he's had 4, 8, and 11 interceptions. That's impressive. And that's good even from a fantasy perspective, because he's not going to be killing you. Kind of like Jameis, Jameis was putting up huge numbers, but then he'd also be detracting from his points every week by throwing a couple picks every time.
Yeah.
And just last year, I think people forget just how highly he finished. The quarterback too. That's impressive, man. Just thinking of all those other guys that are getting drafted ahead of him. Mahomes rightfully so, Lamar rightfully so. But if you think about some of the other guys, Dak showed that he can produce right up there with those guys, and he's been very consistent his whole career.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I'm getting a good value on Dak, I'm taking him wherever I can get him, because he's still so young. Gotta hope that they're going to give him that long-term deal here sooner than later. That's really probably the only concern I would have is that he's going to hold out and it's going to affect his play somehow. But I don't really see that happening, or at least I really hope that's not going to happen. But
yeah.
I think he's just money from fantasy's perspective. He's going to give you at least a few rushing touchdowns every year. He's going to get you some yardage on the ground. He's not going to be the same kind of guy who's churning out yards rushing like other quarterbacks are, like Watson or definitely not Lamar Jackson. But he's going to at least boost that value a little bit, and just to see him then get in that kind of upper echelon of passing yardage last year and touchdowns was huge. The offense just became more funneled through Dak rather than just running the ball into the ground like we had in previous seasons. You definitely saw things open up for him a lot more, and got to give some credit to Kellen Moore for that too. But I think even just coming in there with McCarthy and some being under his tutelage, and seeing how he can continue to help develop them as a passer, I'm excited for what he can continue to do going forward. I think Dak's just a phenomenal player. What do you think, Anthony?
No, go for it, man. Go for it.
You're done with Dak?
No. You just know. I'm 100% all in on fantasy. I just have so many struggles with him watching the game sometimes. But his numbers speak for. I mean, his numbers speak. I don't know what it is. I think it's just a lot of people used to be frustrated with Romo because there seemed like games we should have won and we lost because of something he did.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing here, and it's not usually turnovers. It's usually just like missing a wide open player or something like that. But he had one each year, so I'm with you there. So I'm gonna stick it to strictly fantasy. So yes, fantasy absolutely. 7th round to be a top 5 quarterback. What, he's been top 10 every single year except once. And that was 11th, like you said, and that was because he had a really bad year with interceptions. Zeke was for 6 games, so that first 6 weeks of the season, Dak struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Sophomore slump. Everybody has, not everybody, but a lot of people have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that Jason Garrett is now gone because Mike McCarthy has had some success with quarterbacks in this league. So that is the one thing that I'm banking on with Dak is, you know what? Dak has shown improvements each year. Him and John Kitna worked out really well last year. Now he has Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore. Let's get this thing done. Let's see. I don't know if he's going to finish QB2 again, but definitely has potential to finish in the top 5, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think if Lamar is anything close to what he was last year, he's going to be right there. And then Mahomes too, getting it the whole year.
Yeah.
So yeah, QB2 would probably be a bit rich, but somewhere in that 3 to 5 range, you got to think that that's a pretty plausible outcome if he plays anywhere close to last year's level.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little sad for him. He literally finished 1 yard shy of tying Romo for the season record. Yeah.
Dang.
Which sucked for him, but yeah, I mean,
gonna get it too. I mean, especially as Cooper gets healthy too. He had Cooper banged up down the stretch most of the back half of the year.
Exactly, and that was my main thing, and that I've talked with Noah a lot about was until we saw them re-sign Cooper, I was like, I'm not sold on Dak without Cooper. I'm not.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you look at his numbers. Yes, he had a good year his rookie year. He had a off year, second year, but then as soon as we got Cooper, everything has turned around and he's become elite in fantasy. So.
And Gallup too, as Gallup has developed.
I love Michael Gallup.
Absolutely, Michael Gallup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would expect the interceptions to go down. Honestly, out of those 11 interceptions, a few of them were not even. I know that if they weren't his fault. Like I wish fantasy and I wish the NFL would change this stat when quarterbacks throw a ball and it hits their in the head or in their hands. And
right through their hands, yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's not an interception, man.
That's not on him for sure.
You know, and I hate when that happens. Wise because you lose a few points because of somebody, but I expect his interceptions will go down because McCarthy, you know, I mean, he's very smart with the play calling, and obviously it's going to be Kellen Moore, but it's going to be McCarthy and Moore.
Yeah,
he's good. I like Dak. I just like other quarterbacks better for my team, like Wentz. But that's all.
Yeah,
I love that.
I think the good thing is for Cowboys fans is that you get this year basically to see you get to see what the Cowboys are made of. They have arguably the best weapons in football, and it'll be interesting to see the coaching change, what that does, and is really just going to put the pressure on Dak to perform. So I think for your guys' sake, I think you guys will be all right. I think they're going to do just fine, but we will see. All right, how about the running back situation? You got Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. Zeke was the running back 4 last year. He's got a 5.33 ADP, which is first round. And props to him, 301 attempts last year, 1,300 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns, and still had 54 receptions and 2 touchdowns. And that's been one strong suit to Zeke, has always been his ability to stretch out of the backfield and catch passes, and which is why he's not only been a great running back, but also one of the best fantasy running backs that we've seen in a long time. But Tony Pollard is no slouch either. Had 86 attempts, 455 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Didn't get as much usage in the pass game, but I've read a few things this year talking about him actually working out of the slot as well. Do you guys see similar things for both of these running backs in 2020, or an increase or a decrease or anything?
think Zeke, we're going to see a similar season that we see every year out of him, especially with McCarthy, because like I said earlier, McCarthy said it. He's like, hey, I got best running back in football. I'm going to use him. Like, Zeke's going to get the football.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm surprised he had 300 carries because I don't know about you, Trent, but for me, when I watch some Cowboys games, I feel like sometimes I'm like, why is Zeke not getting the ball a little bit more?
Yeah.
But 300 carries is actually a lot.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. I was like, all right, they actually did use him, but whatever. It seems like they don't sometimes, but I guess I was wrong. But I would expect it to be very similar. I think maybe the carries go down just a little bit for Zeke because Pollard. It's nice to have somebody give Zeke a break. Because Pollard, when he got chances last year, he looks phenomenal. I love Tony. He runs hard. He's shifty. This dude doesn't go down on first contact. I mean, sometimes he will, but it's not easy. And I would expect Pollard, especially more receptions, because the dude is so good with the ball in his hands in open space. So, yeah, I love Zeke, obviously. Always, I'm not going to drop on Zeke, but Pollard, I really love him too. And I really like the upside and the potential of him in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Anthony. I think Zeke's going to be phenomenal, like always. The only thing that I would be maybe worried about if I'm trying to be a savvy fantasy owner, especially in a Dynasty league, is maybe selling him at peak value, and that kills me as a Cowboys fan. But just looking, I mean, he's only 24, but look at all that work he's got, man. I mean, he's gonna hit that plateau eventually, which I'm, as a Cowboys fan, I'm hoping isn't for another few years. So maybe especially if you're a contender, maybe you ride that out and just let him just keep eating on your team and just putting up those points. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Tony Pollard's a good player. I don't know that he's not going to be the same kind of difference maker that Zeke is in terms of that workhorse role, but he's a great like a secondary option, that change of pace
back.
Yeah, man, and just here I've heard some of those rumors too that the Cowboys are looking at using him more as a receiver, which is a strong point of his because he played receiver at Memphis. I don't know how extensively it was, but I mean that's a huge thing, especially for looking at him as a standalone fantasy asset, not just as like Zeke's handcuff. Picking up Pollard in some of the later rounds as potentially like a flex guy with like the ceiling for more or Zeke to get hurt. Yeah, I'm going to be looking to snag Tony Pollard quite a bit.
Yeah.
What is Zeke's ADP looking at like right now? He's probably
five.
Okay. Yeah.
Pollard is
probably
11th round.
Yeah.
In college, he had junior year or sophomore year 29 receptions, junior year 36, senior year 39, and his totals were 298 yards, 536 yards, and 458 yards. So definitely, like you said, he was over 1,000 yards of scrimmage his senior year. So he's definitely got some usage in the pass game as well.
Pollard.
Yeah, Pollard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's when he was in a two-back system with Darrell Henderson.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, wide receivers. We talked a little bit about Amari and the impact that he brings to this team, but the Cowboys go ahead and get a deal signed, 5 years, $100 million, which is great for you guys. I mean, think about this for a second. When Amari came into the league with the Raiders, the Raiders were, I think, the second best team in the AFC, and then when Amari comes to Dallas, he's had a similar impact in just reviving the passing game for the Cowboys. So I feel like, even if they don't re-sign, I don't know what the future looks like for Prescott, but I think that they made the right move in putting the money where Cooper is, just because he is such a huge impact. You obviously need a guy to throw the ball to him, but he makes so many plays when he catches the ball, yards after catch. He had 1,189 yards last year, 79 receptions and 8 touchdowns, and he is currently going right about that same spot as Miles Sanders at 21.5 in the second round. But you also have Michael Gallup in there, and then you have the potential of the Cowboys using that 17th round pick for, I don't know, who knows who's going to be available, but I mean, it very well could be a CeeDee Lamb or a Jerry Jeudy if they fall, or a Henry Ruggs, Justin Jefferson. I love the Cowboys receiving core, and I love the way that it's spread out. Like the fact that you could have the Cowboys wide receiver 2 as basically your wide receiver 1 in 2019 is amazing. And I think that Gallup, he only played 14 games. He very well could have surpassed Amari Cooper in stats had he been able to play in all 16 games. So I'll let you
not drop so many passes. Honestly, I mean, that's probably the biggest knock and the biggest hole that he's got right now. Is he just dropped the ball way too much. I think he led the league in drops, if I remember right. And that was, especially watching the Cowboys games, I mean, it's like just so many times that he just let the ball slip right through his hands. But he's such a talented player, man. I mean, it just pops off the screen, watching him play. And just he and Cooper just make for that great duo. I mean, it just gives Dak someone to throw to every time because you know that they're both going to be getting open. And I love Amari Cooper. I don't know that he's ever quite put it together fully, like maybe a lot of people thought that he would have early on in his career in terms of being like that upper echelon wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
But I think the potential is still there. I still think that that's kind of untapped in the sense that he has had kind of nagging injuries here and there. He's been relatively healthy in terms of games played. But he also just had kind of a rough situation early on in Oakland. I mean, since he's been in Dallas, he's been a whole lot more consistent from a fantasy perspective. That was his biggest complaint that I hear a lot, is that he's just roller coaster. You never know what he's going to get you week to week. But he's been much more consistent. I'm just looking at the numbers, but he still has that kind of game-changing ability where he can win you a week.
Home run ability, man.
Yeah, home run ability.
A game against the Redskins 2 years ago on Thanksgiving.
Oh, dude. Yes.
He had like 3 touchdowns, 200-something yards.
Yeah.
It's amazing that Gallup has so many drops because some of the catches that he makes.
Yeah. It's almost a concentration thing.
Yeah. Edelman led the league in drops, actually, which is crazy. But Gallup was number 2 right behind him.
Damn.
Yeah. Edelman? Really?
Yeah.
But, yeah. No. Yeah. So, I don't know about you, though. I've told Noah many a times. Obviously, we could use an edge rusher. We could use a defensive back. But I would not mind if CeeDee Lamb fell to us or if we drafted Justin Jefferson 17th overall.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel. But, I was – who was it the other day? I think it was Bucky Brooks maybe, or somebody was talking about if the Cowboys took Justin Jefferson 17th. And he's like, you got Cooper on the outside, you got Gallup on the outside, and Jefferson doing what he did so well at LSU, working the middle of the field now that Witten is gone.
Yep.
It's a dream scenario. But
that would be beautiful. But I think a player who's kind of underrated that I'm pretty high on is Devin Duvernay out of Texas, who's another slot guy.
Yeah.
And so if he's there in like the second or third, I think that he could, because we don't necessarily need someone to come in and be like a target hog. We just need him to come in and fill that slot role and do it really well. And Duvernay, I think, could do a great job of that. And just being there in Texas, too, that would probably be a big hit with the fan base. I would love to see that. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate a wide receiver in round 1. I just think that we maybe have other holes to fill. But if it's 100%. A good value, I mean, especially if Jeudy or Lamb fall, I really doubt that that's going to happen. But if they do, snag them, man. I mean,
absolutely
do it, yeah. But yeah, I definitely can see him in the second or third, picking up somebody that would fill that slot role really well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Grab it, C.J. Henderson, a defensive back, or one of these pass rushers. Absolutely.
Yep. Or even maybe offensive line. I mean, I don't know what our depth is looking like, but what
Frederick being gone.
Yeah, Frederick just retired. Yeah, so who knows? But offensive line has been such a strength, and we got all those big contracts. Maybe they go that direction, but that's kind of getting off the fantasy radar a little bit here.
That's all right. Noah expected it.
Yeah.
It's NFL draft season, man.
Yeah. Anything to talk about sports. We'll talk about anything. Yeah. Okay. A question for the both of you. Amari Cooper's ADP is at, like we said, 21.5 in the second round, and Michael Gallup is at 56 in the fifth round. If you had to choose between one of the two for your Dynasty roster, where would you go?
If you're making me pick, I'm picking Gallup. but I'd be happy doing either. I don't know. Just there's probably other receivers in that range that I might still like their ceiling a little bit more than Cooper.
In the second round, yeah.
Yeah, just knowing especially that he's not gonna be quite the alpha type of receiver that with Gallup being there and how Dak spreads the ball around that maybe some of those other guys are. I don't know that he's gonna be that type of target hog, but I like both of them, man. But that's still just maybe a little bit more rich on Cooper. I think you're getting more of a value in Gallup at that point. But
Yeah. The only thing with Gallup for me is with the Cowboys signing Amari to this long term, we know that Amari is going to be in Dallas for a while, and Gallup's going to need paid soon too if he keeps putting up numbers like this, and they're not going to be able to pay him. So it's like, okay, where does he go? Where does he go? Does he go somewhere to be a wide receiver one, and does he flourish there like he is here with Dak? But I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I think Gallup is going to fix the drops, like you said. Because, if you look at it, he had 11 drops, and he had 13 less receptions than Cooper. So you take those 11 drops, cut him in half, he's very close in receptions.
Yep. Maybe I don't know what their yards per catch was, but I feel like he was getting more.
He has more yards per catch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, two players that are going ahead of Michael Gallup right now, Terry McLaurin with the 49th pick and Tyler Boyd at 54. And then two receivers going after him is Jarvis Landry at 58 and Adam Thielen at 61. Which I think the only shocker in there is Terry McLaurin for me. But I would take Gallup over every single one of those players. Just based on... I don't think any of their stats are in comparison to what he did with the Cowboys last year.
Jarvis is close.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in Jarvis. He's still relatively young, too, for how long he's been around.
Yeah, he's 26, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just so consistent, man. He's just going to eat up targets, and he's going to catch the ball all day long. And I think that offense is going to be better, too. So it would be tough there. But... yeah, I still like Gallup in that range.
I'll take all of those guys.
Right.
At value.
Yep.
Honestly.
Okay, how about the tight end position? We talked already about Blake Jarwin had 31 receptions last year, 365 yards, 3 touchdowns as basically the tight end 2 of that team. He finished still as the tight end 25. He's a 14th round draft pick right now. Would you take him as your number one dynasty tight end in the 14th round?
Not as my number one. No. I'm looking at him as probably a tight end 2, tight end 3 if I can help it. Because I like the upside, but I don't know that I necessarily want to rely on starting him. But yeah, I am a Jarwin fan. I think he's shown some decent flashes. I don't know if he's necessarily going to develop into the type of all-around tight end who's going to be like a difference-making type of fantasy player.
Yeah.
But I think he might end up being one of those guys who's a better kind of real-life tight end than a fantasy tight end. Yeah, and like I said earlier too, I'm interested to see what they do in the draft because I could see them getting it's not a real strong tight end class, but even like this year or next year, potentially getting a guy who could develop into that kind of number 1 tight end and then unseat Jarwin from that kind of role. They gave him pretty decent money, but it wasn't anything that was like he's going to be locked and loaded like the number 1 guy. Yeah, I like his upside. I think he's still maybe a little bit lower on value than he should be just based on previous years, and I don't think people are really recognizing how much the Cowboys want to use him. So I think in that sense he's a little bit down on value. So yeah, I'm going to be looking to pick him up where I can, but I'm not going to be overdrafting him in the sense that I'm going to be really relying on him for my team right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he had, I think 28 catches his first year and 31 last year, 3 touchdowns both years. I wasn't as the full-time starter, so I would expect, like you said, Miles Sanders is clearly number 1 now. I'm not saying he's Miles Sanders, but that same scenario where he's now the tight end number 1. We know Amari and Gallup on the outsides, Jarwin work in the middle of the field. Man, this dude has such big hands. He's really fast for a tight end.
Right.
I love everything about him, and I love the potential and the upside. Yeah, I'm not drafting him as my number one tight end. But if I have a if I'm feeling good with a good roster put together and it's
Mm-hmm.
10th, 15th round and Jarwin's still there and I'm looking, I'm like, okay, maybe I can take him here and we'll see what value I get out of him. But yeah, it's like you said, I'm not gonna overpay for him. I'm not gonna overbuy him. Maybe I did when I traded with you, Noah, to get him.
Yeah.
But I needed tight end help. Jason Witten's gone and I'm not relying on him anymore in the Raiders.
Yep.
I was only relying on the Cowboys because that's all I had at tight end. But,
Yeah.
Yep.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's probably worth an ask, like if you're in an existing dynasty league, just to see what the owner thinks of Jarwin, because you could probably get him pretty cheap, and again, you're going to be buying him on the front end of his value bumping.
Right.
So then even if he does better this year and you're not sold on his long-term potential, then you can always sell him later for better value.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like him as a player. It's just got to see the targets get there too. I don't think you can just necessarily be like, oh, here's Jason Witten's targets, just gonna take him and add him to Jarwin. It just doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
So it's gonna go up, but it's just a matter of how up is it gonna go and how involved is he really gonna be. But he definitely seems like he's got that kind of downfield. Like he can make some big chunk plays, which is always helpful as a tight end. But yeah, mostly I'm going to be looking at Jarwin as like if I go tight end pretty early, like if I grab Kittle or like Mark Andrews or somebody like that early on that I really like, and then I'm going to wait later on to grab my second tight end. I'm going to be looking to get someone like Jarwin later on to kind of back up my stud, because then he's got that higher upside. But I won't necessarily need to use him.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm just excited because all the reports are Blake Jarwin and the Cowboys are ready to like roll him out and they're ready for him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you can say that. Every year it seems like somebody on the Cowboys is ready to ball. And they don't.
Right.
So
Rico gathers.
let's see it. Basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of that too might be if they bring in a really quality slot receiver, and if they don't, if they miss out on getting a guy like that in the draft, then maybe he is seeing even more of that work than he would have otherwise, because they're having to rely on him a little bit more heavily.
Yeah. So here's a question. Noah probably was expecting this. I almost forgot, but you just mentioned about the potential slot receiver. Just anything. Would you, if we pass on wide receiver and don't take any, or at least any that's going to make an impact right away, would you welcome a return of Dez Bryant as that number 3 wide receiver in this offense?
Absolutely not. No.
Why not? Why not?
Because I just don't think that I think he's too pigeonholed in terms of like what he can do. I think it's almost going to kind of limit things in the offense more than it's going to be helpful. And we're really more looking for someone to be in the slot. I mean, Amari, I think, can play a competent slot, but it's maybe not necessarily his primary role. And I think part of the beauty of having Cooper and Gallup is that we can kind of shift them around a little bit. And I think Dez is a little bit too, like he has kind of that niche of being that type of like X receiver where he's playing the outside, and he really only has a few strengths that I don't necessarily think that we need. And I think just kind of a locker room thing too, I don't know how that would go over then all of a sudden having him back in there, the real vocal type of guy that he is, and not always the best way. So I don't know. And just having him be out of football for, how long has it been? Like 2-3 years now?
2 years,
Yeah, 2 years out. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's worth the risk, especially since we're probably going to have to keep paying him a little bit more than we would just bringing in a rookie or somebody. So I don't think the Cowboys would want to make that move. And I'd rather us go with the youth and develop somebody than spend that money and dedicate those snaps to somebody that doesn't really have a future with the team long term.
I don't think it'll be a lot of money, but I hear everything you say. I got you. It's good.
And I love Dez. I thought Dez was great,
I know.
especially in his prime. Man, he was a beast. But yeah, I mean, just the fact that he hasn't stuck with any other teams, and just looking back on how he was used, I mean, he was great in that wide receiver 1 role, but we don't really need that. That's not what we need at this point. So I don't know. I can see him being, wanting to get some targets and trying to get Dak to throw him the ball more, and just that being kind of a mess.
Yeah, it's hard to like. I know everything that he says is, I don't. I know I'm not a number one anymore. I just want to be on a team. I want to win a Super Bowl. I don't.
Yeah.
I've changed. I'll be different. I know it's easy to say that. It's hard to really believe just because of how passionate he was as a player. But hey, it worked for Dwight Howard with the Lakers this year.
True.
So, but I don't know. Yeah, I was just wondering because I just keep seeing it, and I know I saw the report that said pretty much Jerry and Stephen Jones are okay with it. It's up to Mike McCarthy. I'm like, well,
Interesting.
I don't know if that's true. I saw it. It was on. It was maybe Bleacher Report or one of those. One of those. I can't remember which one it was, but it basically said the decision is basically up to Mike McCarthy because they want him to run his team.
Yep. And it could be a type of thing where they could bring him in and like let him go through camp and all that stuff and like see if it's gelling and see if it's going to be helpful, and if not, cut him.
See ya. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, if it's that, yeah. But I'd rather take CeeDee Lamb.
100%. Yeah.
So.
Des Bryant might even put CeeDee Lamb on the team over him. Yeah.
Awesome.
You know what?
Well, before we let you go, Trent, we appreciate your time. We don't want to take any more of it. Let's give our predictions for the NFC East, starting from the bottom all the way up to the top. I don't know about you guys. I'll start Redskins at number 4.
Easy. Very easy. Yes.
Yeah, in agreement.
Okay.
Sorry, Washington.
Consensus. How about number 3?
Ooh. Man.
I hate to be predictable, but I still got to go Giants, man. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
I can see how they could take a leap, but I think it's still going to take a little bit for like Joe Judge to turn that around a bit. I just don't know what their defense is like.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to imagine a scenario where the Giants jump the Eagles, but me
too.
I
hate them.
when you got Carson Wentz, I just don't see any way that they do that. So I'll agree. I'll go Giants in the 3rd spot as well.
Yeah, Giants. The only way the Giants surpass the Eagles is if Carson Wentz gets hurt.
Yeah. Okay, how about number 2?
The Eagles.
This is where it gets fun.
This isn't even biased. This is just talent. Yeah, I'm looking at, and a new coach.
Yeah, I'll go Eagles.
If Dak gets his contract, I'm going Eagles too. I think if there's some issues with it where they don't get the deal done and he's holding out, I can see that causing problems. Like early on, us not getting off to a good start. But otherwise, I'm taking Eagles too.
Yeah. All right, and that leaves the Cowboys as the NFC East champs. Let's hope.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
It's just, if you look at Dak's career against the Eagles, except for the last game last year, Dak is he has outdueled Carson Wentz every time. I will give him that.
The whole division, man, he's dominated the whole division.
He has dominated the NFC East. I don't know his career record off the top of my head, but it's probably somewhere around like 16-4.
Yeah.
If that, maybe even better.
And I like what they did on the defense too. I mean, losing Byron Jones was a hit, but I think that we'll find other ways to offset that. But I mean, we got Clinton Dix back there. He's a solid player.
Oh yeah.
And we got some like Gerald McCoy on the line, Dontari Poe on the D line. So we got a couple of good players in there. Sean Lee's back to be a depth role. So if we keep
we need
more
Van
guys
Resch
healthy on defense.
Yeah, you need Van Resch.
Oh, he's a monster. I love Van Resch.
Him and Jalen Smith stay healthy. It's a wrap.
Yeah.
And we'll find another defensive back to get 0 interceptions. We'll be okay.
Yeah, it might be that round 1 pick. We'll see. But yeah, I like the Cowboys this year. They just gotta hopefully that McCarthy does a better job of getting them to kind of finish off games and
absolutely
pull through in the clutch than we got the last couple of years. But that's really the big thing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, before we do let you go, I don't know if Noah, have you? So we're doing our draft one next week. We're doing our draft podcast. We're doing it live draft.
Sweet.
While they do the NFL draft, we're gonna have fans of teams when they come on, when their picks are made, come on with us just to give us their reaction. You're more than welcome when the Cowboys make that 17th pick if you want to jump on with us, and we can watch that pick and